Welcome back to the Real with Joseph Lamtman. I am Joseph Lamtman. Happy Wednesday to you guys. Hope you guys are having a good day. If you're where I am here in Ohio, we woke up to a smoky skies from the Canadian wildfires. I don't know, man. You go outside, it smells. You could smell it. It smells like kind of like rubber. It's weird. It smells like rubber, plastic. I don't know. You could definitely smell it though, and it's kind of weird. It looks kind of hazy when you look out. You can't really see trees, but you know, is what it is. I still had to go outside get some work done earlier, so that was interesting being outside, just looking around, not being able to see more than like 200 yards away. But we're here, so hope everybody's having a good Wednesday, and yeah, excited for today's show. I want to come on and kind of do like a follow up, in a way, of a lot of things I talked about in my last episode. If you haven't seen it, episode 74, I put out Sunday night. I explained where I've been the last couple months when I took a break, the 16-week journey I went on when I was doing the Anxiety Guide program, the Inner Circle program. Went on a 16-week journey and completely changed everything for me. And it was time for me to do that. It was time for me to finally take things to another level. I've been doing better for about a year or so since I started the podcast, but I was getting to the point where I was starting to go back to some older habits, kind of just starting to working through a lot of new things as well. I was doing that were causing me to, anytime you go through any like new things, you start to get a lot of uncertainty. And so I think the biggest thing I had to learn how to deal with still was uncertainty, and a lot of times with uncertainty comes with seeking control, seeking reassurance, seeking trying to figure things out that you can't sometimes just can't figure out. Maybe it's not meant for you to figure out at that time. It's not meant for you to know everything at that time, right? And so just a lot of things, a lot of new things, and a lot of uh, a lot of times we can. I was holding myself back in some ways, and a lot of times we can hold ourselves back because in order to truly get better, if you really want to heal from your anxiety, if you really want to not live under the control of anxiety and fear, you have to surrender and learn how to let go. And that's what I had to do. I had to learn how to surrender. I had to learn how to let go fully. And it's not easy to do. It's a daily practice, and it still is a daily practice, and it always will be for the rest of your life. Excuse me, because that's part of life. We're always going to run into new things that are going to challenge us. Things don't always go oftentimes as we planned. Um, and that's kind of been my life for the last 8 years, really. I went into when all this really started with me was my ninth grade year when it really took off. I had anxiety before that, but I went in with a plan, and within a year, things did not go how I thought they were going to go, and needed for my family and I, it was an adjustment, and so, um, but God had a better plan, and I'm glad things went the way they went. I'm glad certain things, even within the last year, I'm glad certain things didn't happen in my life because at the time when I was searching for certain things, um, God was showing me where I still need to improve myself, and that's what He does. And it doesn't mean those things don't happen either. Just because a door maybe is temporary closed or things don't go the way you thought doesn't mean things don't happen eventually. Because sometimes God takes us on detours, and He takes you on detours because He's trying to uh, take you to a whole nother level spiritually, but mentally, emotionally, physically. But also, He's preparing you, and He's preparing for where He's taking you as well. He's preparing that as well, whether it's something or someone, whatever it is. And so it's different for everybody. And so that's what's been going. That's kind of what I've been going through the last probably 6 months. A lot of new things, but really the last since February, late February when I started the program, that's when things really started to, I started to really dial into things and going on the program and everything. So I wanted to get into today the why we often hold ourselves back, and I think we often hold ourselves back for a variety of reasons. But like I mentioned, at least for me, from my experience, it was more of it was afraid to let go of the control, and it was afraid to let go of. It was almost like a trick my mind was playing on my fear, the lower self was playing on me. The enemy was trying to play on me, which was, man, if you don't try to control, if you don't try to, you know, get out in front, if you don't try to, whatever it is, like, you don't try to constantly go at it. If you don't like, and what I mean by that is It's almost like you're doing things out of fear. When you're constantly trying to find the answer to something or things in your life that you just can't seem to figure out, you put more pressure on yourself. And when you put more pressure on yourself, you start to be overly critical of yourself, and you can often lead into a depression. You can often lead into discouragement. And that causes a lot of anger, and it's just kind of a spiral effect. Once you get discouraged, once you get down in like a depression, you're very vulnerable to anything because you're once your conscience gets fogged up from thinking clearly, you can't make rational decisions. And all the times you make bad, poor decisions or things. Maybe look down the road, you look back, you think you wish you could have did differently, and that's always part of life as well. And that's something I've gone through in the last year, and things I went through like that in the last 8 years. Many different things, different degrees, but I think now after going through the program and where I am now, I take my time a lot more different things, many things in my life, but also I just kind of the one thing I've gone through that's really helped me the last year, which is I think another reason why we hold ourselves back. This is what held me back for a while was concealment and afraid to be vulnerable around people. Right? We're afraid to be vulnerable around people. Um, we're afraid to just be ourselves. I think our society, I think people as a whole are afraid to be themselves around people. They're afraid to tell people how they really feel. They're afraid to tell people um, what they really think about something. They're afraid to be who they really want to be, act a certain way they want to act. If they think something's funny, or that's maybe some people don't, but it's funny to them, but like in a good way, then but it's like we shy away from things that aren't that what the world says isn't popular or what the world says isn't good enough. And it can be many different ways. It could be your how you look, your appearance. You might think people don't. You have to look a certain way, whether that's beauty standards or dress the way you dress or whatever. What you have, how people see you, and that's pressure. And a lot of times it's to me it's bullshit, to be honest with you. But for a lot of people that's what runs their life, and they stay. It's like a monkey see, monkey do mentality. If everyone around you is going around and doing things you haven't done yet, you try to get in a hurry, and a lot of times when you get in a hurry, you settle, and you settle for less, and you really don't. People miss out on what God really had intended for them because they rush and they get into bad decisions, they get in poor choices, and oftentimes down the road it'll catch up to you. And you could be, I'm 23 years old. You could start. If I was 23 years old right now, and I started making certain like real life decisions that really weren't meant for me, I'd be 28, 29, 30 years old, having to restart life. Like in a negative way, like in a deep hole, because oftentimes you can live a lie. And it's the same thing with anxiety. It's almost like living a lie when you live with anxiety. For so long, we're afraid to let go because we think the anxiety has kept us alive in a way, if you really think about it, because anxiety almost it's like it's very it's very slick in a lot of ways because it at least for me, like I would think for a long time I was in a state of mind of, okay, I made it to these events, things I feared, or times, let's say like there was times where I was going in certain situations where I'd get panicky, right? And um, I would go into the situation just trying to hurry up through it, trying to hurry up and get out. But I wouldn't, what I mean? It was almost like trying to survive it. It was like a survival mentality. But the more you do that, you're really just holding yourself back more because you're not really absorbed in the environment. You're not really absorbed into the situation. So you really can't see it for what it really is, which is nothing. Ain't nothing wrong. I mean, you're allowing the fear to still control you. And so you're not really getting better if you live like that. And that was me for a long time. But the anxiety will play tricks on you because your mind thinks, the lower self believes, inner child, lower self, what do you want to call it? I like the lower self. I like that term for that. But I think it thinks that part of you, the unconscious part of you thinks, well, this is what's kept us alive to this point. This is what's kept us this is how we made it this far. How can it not? How can we have to stop doing that? It's kept us alive. But oftentimes with anxiety, the things that you're doing that your mind thinks is keeping you alive is really what's holding you back. It's a unconscious cycle that's not going. It's like a hamster running on a wheel. It's not going anywhere. You're just gonna stay there. You might find things that look better down the road. You might be able to add some things to it, but you're always gonna stay there. You're never gonna reach it your highest potential, and you don't really do what you really want to do oftentimes. And so I got some clips I'm going to play real quick from this video from the anxiety guy a while back talking about the ego. Because if you really think about a lot of what I just said, a lot of it's centered around the ego. If you really think about it, it's our own ego. And the ego doesn't mean like what we ought to think, but the ego can be that lower self, that part of you. It's like because if you really think about it, it's kind of like a selfish mentality in a way. The ego is trying to, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because hello, you're talking to somebody that's been there. So whatever I'm telling you guys is something I've already been through myself, had to tell myself, and still do often sometimes. And so, but again, it's almost like maybe not selfish, but it's a very, I don't want to phrase it. You only go so you only feel comfortable going so far because you're trying to. It's almost like you're trying to play everything safe. If you constantly try to play things safe, how are you ever going to achieve anything? You're never going to. It's almost you're like living under something that controls you. You allow the fear, the illusion, when it's usually what it is. Your fears usually aren't real; they're illusions, and it's only you're allowing them to control you. They have you on a string. I can do this, but I can only go so far. You hold yourself back, or you're afraid to let go of things. That's something for a lot of people. They're afraid to let go of things. That was me for a long time. I was, when I left high school abruptly, there was some things that happened to me. I was hurt for a while. I was angry at some people, but the more I held on to that anger, the more I held on to that hurt, to the point where there was times where, part of you wants to see that you let hate and anger and hate just to build up inside of you. It just starts to darken your spirit, and you start to get depressed. But you also you start to seek that you want to seek vengeance on people, and you just start to make things more difficult in your mind and your imagination what they really are. And it wasn't until I got over that years down the road where I started to open up more. But I also started to feel more. I started to feel better because I started to see things for what they really were. And I realized what really happened too, and it was nobody's fault. It was just a misunderstanding. There was some people that could have did some things better, but who am I to judge? I mean, nobody's perfect. You live and you learn, and you just take it with a grain of salt and keep going. God doesn't want me to stay stuck in that incident. That's for Him to handle and to. That's for Him to take care of whatever happened in the past. Leave it to Him. It's the same thing in the present, same thing in the future. Surrendering all to Him and leaving it to Him. And so, but I want to play some clips from these videos real quick, or from this video rather. It's some like a couple clips I got written down, talking about concealing our anxiety and why we hold ourselves back. And so, let me get into the first clip here. Okay, I'm gonna play this, and then I'll be giving some commentary as well as we go along.
That's where we're going today, my friends, because the truth is this, okay? Try to grasp these words. You cannot heal through the same eye that created anxiety in the first place. So if you feel like your approach to your healing is in line with the same I or the same identity that brought you anxiety in the first place, if you can get that sense, then you're going to be like a hamster running on a hamster wheel, right? It's never going to end, okay? So it's very, very important that we understand that we have to take a completely different approach to our healing. And what that means is that we have to feel vulnerable. We have to feel naked at times, right? We have to feel like we're stepping out of the norm and the things that have become very, very comfortable to us, right? But I want you to see if you can connect.
So, I love how you set the table there for what I'm talking about today. let's start with what he said first. You cannot heal through the same eye. And that's kind of what I was just saying about habits, right? The same habits we've done for so long. You have to start to. It doesn't mean I'm not saying you got to fix everything in one day because that's impossible. You can't. But here's what I learned through the program when I was on my 16 weeks, right? And what I've learned in my past is exactly what he just said. It wasn't until I started to really be honest with myself and say, okay, Joseph, why are you still not able to let go of some things? Why are you still not able to be comfortable with certain things? Why are you still allowing yourself to be held under that strain? And what I had to learn was, well, I'm afraid to let go of these habits because I feel like I made like an unconscious connection to these habits, to these feelings, and to these thought patterns. And you're afraid to let go of certain things. And so for me, it was exactly what he just said. It wasn't until I started to allow and surrender to the feelings. So, for instance, when I would go into a situation in the past that would make me really frantic, I started to become, and the program helped me with this, I would become more aware that usually initially when you're afraid of something or something's uncomfortable, something's new, you're going to a situation, you're doing something, or you want to challenge yourself to something, you want to tell somebody something that you've never really done, it can be very frantic at first. That's key. You got to remember that there's stages oftentimes our mind will respond with. Your body's just responding out of it thinks it's trying to protect you, right? And so oftentimes we realize, like for instance, I would think of something that used to give me fear, right? And I'll get really frantic thinking about it first. And I'll get like to the point where I'll start putting movies in my head. Let's say, like for instance, I would think of somebody going out of town, right? Let's say like my dad or somebody I'm really close with. And I had to go through this actually, to where, let's say they're going out of town and I view them as like my support person. So if I'm not around them for a couple of days, I start to think of all the worst case scenarios. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just using an example too. So you go to a situation where it may make you fearful, you feel uncomfortable, you feel vulnerable. You can start to, your mind will initially get very frantic and your body will start to react to that with symptoms. And a lot of times it's not until we allow that to pass through, which is very key, because what holds people back is and this is what I used to struggle with, why I would stay in that frantic stage and I wouldn't allow myself to do things, is because you start to add fuel to the fire, right? You start to add more coals to the mess that's already there. You start to just add more fuel to it. Really, and the more you do that, the bigger and bigger it looks in your mind. You add to the fear, and the bigger it gets, the more overwhelming it becomes. Now you're in fight or flight mode to the point where you're either going to run away and avoid it and just put it off, or you do everything you can in your power to fight, and oftentimes that leads to panic attacks, anxiety attacks, sleepless nights, tension, all of it. You just start to write all these illusions in your head. You get angry. It's just everything just snowballs in a negative effect, all based around an illusion. And so what I had to do was say, okay, if someone's going out of town, dad's going out of town, what is my evidence in the past? What's my evidence in the past 10 years of my life that I've been going through anxiety? Have I ever been in a situation similar to this? I would ask myself that. I'd say yes. Okay. Have I made it through every time? Yes. Is what I'm fearful of, which is having a panic attack, that's maybe, like for me, Vincent, it would be having a bad panic attack and no one's around to help, and I would think the panic attack would possibly kill me or harm me, or or just something bad, or I would just get in a bad state of mind. And I would say, okay, has that ever happened? No, it hasn't. So everything I was afraid of, but that I kept letting control me though for years in these situations, didn't change until I finally confronted them. Until I said, okay, you know what? But it wasn't until I realized what I was feeling at first. I think oftentimes the initial wave that we feel with something, which is that frantic stage, which is completely normal. It's completely normal for your body to respond like that, especially in something new or unfamiliar, you don't do often. It's completely normal to feel like that. But you have to understand what it is. You can't allow it to dictate what you do from here on out. And that's what I had to learn. And so what really helped me was surrendering. And surrendering for me was spiritual, praying like I never prayed before, and literally getting on my hands and knees and surrendering it to God, and daily, and sometimes multiple times a day. And but also, even in moments where I would feel the symptoms of the anxiety or the fear, where I get the intrusive thoughts, I would literally just sit and allow. I know it's hard to do for some people, but that's what I would do. I would just sit just like this. And I would just allow. And over time, when I did that, I would then eventually I'd get up, still feeling the tension, and I'd start to move around. I'd start doing small things. I'll just find like some miscellaneous shit to do. You know what I mean? I'd start to like clean out the fridge, or I would start writing down, like drawing. I'd start watching film on Teams, or I would just, just like stupid stuff. And then eventually I would start, not say stupid, but like little things. You know what I mean? And so like over time, for me, I would actually, what helped me most was going outside. I would go outside and start watering the plants, the grass, and just find stuff to do outside, get the fresh air. I'll walk down by the water. I do all kinds of stuff. And so, and over time, what happens the more you do that consistently, for me, it was just a matter of like a couple days leading up to an event. And so, again, this is from my experience. And so I would start to do that. And then over time, what would happen is the symptoms would go away. And so each day when I did that, and I did it consistently, which is what the program taught me, that my mind started to think about the upcoming event differently, and how I would start to view it in a more rational, truthful way. What's really accurate about it, right? I started to look at it for what it really was, which was nothing. But also at the same time, I learned to give myself grace. And that was something for 7 years. That was something I really struggled with. And I never really realized, and my counselor who I would work with would tell me, like, Joe, you need to have more grace upon yourself. And I'm like, right. But I didn't really understand what he was saying, because I wasn't aligned, because I was just so in that frantic stage still. I was still just, man, for 7 years, I was just in a mode. Like, I was just like so locked in on certain things where I would just get like, I was just locked in to where it wasn't until I finally had a setback in 2021, and I just had to slow down finally and allow myself to just be a little more looser. I started to be more open to people, let things out, let things go. And then over time, I started to build up having more grace upon myself. But that's very key. It's just being compassionate towards yourself and understanding that what you're feeling is normal, and you're okay, and you're not alone at all. Like, there's your neighbor right now could be sitting there over having some anxiety. And you know how I know? Because it happened to me. I start talking to my neighbors. I start talking to all these people I run into, random people, and they're sitting there. They're like, yeah, I have it too. I had a bad panic attack yesterday. I'm like, really? And the more I did this, I would talk to these people. The more I would talk to people, the more they would tell me, like, they go through it too. The more you start to realize, like, damn, I'm really not alone. You're really not alone. And so it's all about mindset, though. All about mindset. But let me get to my next part here. What is it? Bear with me. All right, here we go. So here's the next clip I want to play with you guys, share with you guys.
The ego is very overly critical. Do you find yourself being critical towards yourself? Like, I should have done this differently. I should have said that. Why didn't I act that way? Not only towards yourself, but once you're content with yourself, you start to become overcritical towards the world and other people. Why didn't my father treat me this way? It's almost like that ego, or that I, or that inner child is looking for ways to bring you back into a fear-based, threatened, anxious state, reminding you of a picture from like 8 years ago. Why are you bringing that up now, right? And so we fall for the trap. We fall for the trap that brings us back into a comfortable and familiar state of being called fear and anxiety. In this state, We don't trust in the uncertain anymore, right? We stay within our comfort zones, which is what the ego wants, right? So it's always looking to pull you back. If you're living through the I or the ego, you're always striving to feel good. I just wish I could feel good, right? But we have to understand that that's a never-ending battle, right? Feeling good is a result of things that you perceive differently, the vulnerability that you embrace, the different wordings that you use, the different actions. So the idea or the goal of I want to feel good doesn't really make sense, because this isn't something that you should be shooting for, but rather it be a result of other things that you're doing differently.
So a lot of great stuff there. He said that 2-minute clip. Yeah, like what he said. He even said 8 years. That was me for 8 years. Man, guys, for 8 years, I would sit there and just a lot of things I thought happened to me 8 years ago. Like I said earlier, what I thought, how I thought people perceived me, how I thought. It's like, for instance, when I went through that experience in high school, like I thought there was a lot of people that just weren't like me, like what I was going through. And then as time went on, I looked back and I started talking to people more, especially like in the last couple of years, and I was like, no, we were actually really all alike. Like, again, I was never alone, but I was being very overly critical of myself though, as well. And I was trying to take all the blame for everything at some points. Not say, well, I don't say take all the blame, but I was starting to allow what didn't happen, what I thought was going to happen, because I thought what didn't happen was what I needed to do, if that makes sense. Like, that was the only way I could be successful, is because that's the path I thought I had to go down. But then I learned that wasn't true. And so, but again, I was being very overly critical of myself, and I was isolating myself with that bad mentality. And it's almost like always anticipating the worst. And you start becoming a victim. And when you become a victim, you become discouraged, you become depressed. And you start to just put, like I said earlier, you put inaccurate stories in your head, inaccurate things that are inaccurate of what's really going on. And so, yeah, and I love what he said. And I think too, I like the second part he said, is constantly trying to chase perfection is really what that is. Trying to always feel, if you feel like you have to feel good to do things constantly, I got to feel 100%, I got to be, because our society tells us that. Society says you need to reach a certain level to do certain things. You need to be at this point to do certain things. You need to, it's just full of shit is what it is. It's full of crap. I'm trying. But I think if you constantly live by that perfectionist mentality, it's never going to be good enough. And a lot of times when you get, that can actually damage you spiritually, because you'll start to get angry at God. You start, or not say get angry, but you start to doubt God. When you start to doubt God, when you start to doubt your spirit, when you start to doubt things you can't control, or, well, how do I phrase it? When you start to doubt the person who controls all things, because we don't control anything. A lot of things we don't control. One that controls our perception. You start to get that negative mentality. You start to doubt God, and you start to go down paths that you maybe were taken away from, but now you're going back towards, or things maybe you should be going towards. Deeper holes and things that will put you in a much worse state. And so, yeah, don't try to chase perfection. You don't have to be a certain person to do something. You don't have to, like, for me, for instance, I'm single. I've never dated because it just, because of my past. I'm glad I didn't date in the last 8 years, because that would have been a burden to somebody else, and it would have been terrible for me. But because it wouldn't have worked out where I was. But also, it's like me trying to, if the world will tell somebody like me, okay, you're 23, you haven't dated yet, there's something wrong with you. That's what the world will tell me. A lot of people might say that, right? You might feel that. That might be what society, the pressure you feel from the outside world. If I paid attention to that shit, that's what it is. It's shit. All right, let's just tell it like it is. It's shit. Because if I paid attention to that, I would start to be overly critical of myself, but also I would start to strive for perfection in a way, or what the world says is perfection. And when I would do that, I would start to become somebody who I'm not. I'm turning into a false sense of who I am. I'm playing a persona to try to fit in. But the hell with that. I don't care about that. You know what I mean? It's just like my plan for me in my life is God's plan. His time for me is just different, maybe than other people's. But does it mean I'm going to miss out on anything or get things? Nothing's ever too late or too early with God. Everything's on time. Everything's going to be at its best when it happens. And so all I can do is just be the best, try to become the best person I could be, better than I was yesterday every single day. That's all I can do. And eventually, who knows? It could happen next week. It could happen tomorrow. I don't know. You know, you just never know. You never know when something will happen. And so, but all you can do is just, and I get it. It's like, for instance, for me, with singlehood and stuff, it could be hard at times. I'm not going to lie. You know, here we're human. That's something I desire for. I think it's something that could be beneficial in a lot of ways because there are a lot of great benefits that comes from God, how God designed that to be, if we think about it. But, you know, I trust Him. But yeah, when I get moments where I get down about it, or I start to wonder if it'll ever happen, or I could sit and question myself about certain things. You know, did I do something wrong? You know what I mean? Is it something with me? I'm like, no, it's not. It's just let it go to God. It's in God's hands. You know what I mean? That could be for anybody, but don't be overly critical of yourself, and don't try to bear all the weight because you're not supposed to. That's for God to handle. But also, things aren't accurate when you do that. Like, you start to lead yourself down paths that just aren't. It's not really accurate of what's really going on. And one thing I learned in my past, and this is a good reminder for me with all this, is oftentimes when you're closest to things is when you start to feel the most pressure. And that's spiritual. You got to really think deep on why that's happening. I know why. Some of you might know why. But when you're really close to things and you start to feel the most pressure, because there's somebody else who knows you're getting close to something, and God's about to take you somewhere, but they're trying to tease you. He's trying to stop you. He's trying to hinder you, right? There could be people in the world that see where you're heading. There's a lot of people out there that are very competitive with each other nowadays, especially with social media. Social media's made our society very competitive. People get very envious, very jealous, very control freak, very just a lot of bad things. People, again, see, it could be some of that out there as well. Very spiritual. You really think about it. It's why being tapped into the spirit is so key. What's changed my life, obviously, especially last year, but in the 16-week program as well, when I was on the Inner Circle program, my spiritual life got deeper than it's ever been, because I started to really just talk to God one-on-one, and I would go to Him first for everything. Start to look at things for what they really were. Because for those, I'll be honest, I always go through some new things that were making me question myself, or just kind of wonder what the hell's going on, or it's just human nature. We sit there, we try to solve things that we desire that maybe haven't happened yet. For instance, like with singlehood, as an example. But oftentimes, God's just saying, like, no, hand it to me. Like, I got it. I got you. And I've been in so many prayers where I just that's all I could just feel God telling me in my soul, like my spirit, like, hey man, like, hey, I got you, Joseph. Just trust me. I know what you did. I know you've done. When I just do what I ask you to be, just when I call you to do things, you have faith to do them, be obedient, and I got you from here. And I know He does. But again, even if you don't believe in God, if you're somebody out there right now, maybe you don't believe in God, that's completely, hey, that's your choice between you and Him. I'm not judging you. Still love you the same. But we all have those moments where we start to question ourselves, right? We start to try to be, like you said, overly critical. And I keep harping on this because this is a very key point. And it kind of goes back to, like I was saying earlier, about being in that frantic stage. You have to be able to let go. You have to be able to let go of the control, and don't hold yourself back, because if you keep doing this, you're just gonna stay in that cycle. And sometimes the blessing might pass you by. What you're looking for, what you're trying to feel, sometimes is often right in front of you. What you're trying to, I don't say feel, what you're trying to where you're trying to go, oftentimes it's literally right there, just a step away, but oftentimes it's just the step of letting go. Like, it's just the step of just letting it go, and then usually it happens. It was like the day when I did my first podcast. I had all these doubts in my mind about doing it. I was very frantic about doing it. And it wasn't until God that morning led me out in the car, my dad and I saw some things in certain parts of Akron. I saw some like real homeless people, saw some people really struggling. And I remember my dad said something to me. He's like, he goes, you think, I remember there was one standing on a corner that morning. This is when I knew it was the day to do it. There was like no more excuses. Like, dude, just go home. You got the mic set up. What the hell are you waiting on? Fucking do it. So I went home. Well, I'm sitting there rather at the light. We're over by Chapel Hill area in Akron. And my dad just looked at me and he goes, "See that homeless guy over there? What do you think he has? You think he slept a lot last night? You think he has so many more?" And this is, I know there's people out there that fake the homeless. Like, there's people out there, this guy was really, you could tell when somebody's really, and I know, because there was a point in time where my family and I were damn near homeless. So luckily, though, we had family members that helped give us a place to stay until we got back on our feet. But you just know that when people are really struggling, right? And I've been sometimes when I've been out on the bike, or I've ran into some people and going through they need help at that moment. It's been happened twice, and it's very humbling to see it because it reminds you what's really going on. And that's what happened to me that morning. But again, it also helped me to realize, like, hey man, things aren't as serious as we make them out to be. Like, we don't have to overcomplicate things. Just do it. Just allow yourself to do it. And that's what I did. I went home. Now, when I recorded that first episode, was it easy? Hell to no. If you go back and watch my first episode, you see me moving around a lot because I'm real frantic. My face is bright red. I had so much tension when I was doing it. It was a lot, but I did it though. And I pushed through it because I knew I could do it. And that's the key. It's the mindset. Do you truly believe you can do it? Because if you have a goal, if something's constantly on your mind to do something, it's probably telling you something. God's telling you something. And again, if you don't, it's still a sign. You should try. That means you probably should tap into that a little bit more. You constantly are thinking about doing something you really want to do, something you think about a lot. Go for it. Tap into it a little bit. Maybe just give it a look. Just start to see what's going on there. Go towards it. And eventually you start to realize what I realized, which was not just that, many other things in the last year as well. Things really aren't what I thought they were. I had no reason to be. I wasn't wrong for how I felt because it was new, but that franticness, that initial fear, the delusions in my head that were making me fearful of doing it, were not real at all, and they were complete opposite. And so, but yeah, I don't know, I ran a little bit there, but let me go to my next clip here. I got a couple more for you guys. Okay, 6 minutes. All right, here we go. Maybe.
Really should be questioned. And later on, I'm going to speak to you in terms of how the higher self starts to go about life, and therefore anxiety will start to take a backseat. What else about the ego? The ego associates different to threat, right? Anything that's different is threatening. Don't do it, right? Stay in your comfort zones. The ego has connected accomplishments to your level of self-worth, right? Do you feel this right now? Like, I don't feel very worthy unless I do something, unless I make that much money, or unless I get that career, or unless I have like 5 billion friends. Right? I'm not worthy unless I have at least, 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. When you give up the power struggle with the ego, right, you will start meeting your higher self more often, right? This is all about a power struggle. The ego has created a need for the dopamine hit that comes with stress and anxiety. We start to connect to it. It's like breathing air, right? Once you start to feel inner peace, you're going, oh, this is different, right? Well, I don't know what to do with this. I'm healthy? Wow, that's really I don't know what to do with all this good health, right? So consciously and unconsciously, we revert back to the most familiar thing, worry, stress, right? So we fall for the traps again, okay?
Yeah, I didn't really need to harp on this one because of kind of what I just said for 20 minutes, whatever. It felt like 20 minutes, whatever it was, 10 minutes. But yeah, I mean, I like what he said there though about, how like we think our self-worth is made by accomplishments. And, it's really sad because, honestly sad, but I feel bad for a lot of people, man. Growing up when I went to school, especially the new high school I went to, I really noticed this. When I went to a new school in the 9th grade for the year I was there, I just noticed a lot of people were with a lot of pressure on them. And and I saw this in sports too, growing up too. Just so much pressure. I mean, just people constantly trying to reach for the mountaintop. People pushing their kids to reach for the mountaintop and to have everything had to look perfection. Everything had to be about perfection, being a certain standard, looking a certain way, achieving certain things constantly. Just constant pressure on the kids. And a lot of these people, when they got older and they got to go out to college, we had more freedom. They were living their best life. Let's just put it that way. But because they just never had freedom growing up. They just never had they could never really be themselves, who they wanted to be. They didn't have a voice. And I really feel for those people. And a lot of people have judgments about certain groups of people or how people look. But I don't do that, man, because just because somebody maybe has more money than you or maybe somebody has less than you, you should never judge somebody. You don't know what the hell that person's going through. And a lot of times, you're no different than them. Your shit don't smell better than theirs. Just keep it a buck. I mean, there ain't you never know what somebody's going through. And you just never a lot of people are going through the same things, same shit you're going through. So why you shouldn't go in with a prejudgment about things. And it's one thing I learned there. And it's just crazy because a lot of those people, man, it's just sad to see people crumble under that pressure. And a lot of them are paying the consequences now at 23, 24 years old of having that pressure put on them. And it wasn't their fault either. And, now it's up to them to kind of how they deal with it because, you're on your own now. But, it's just really sad, man, because I think a lot of these things, a lot of what happens with anxiety, with mental health, I think it's a big thing nowadays. Everybody's a mental health advocate now. But I just think a lot of what we see now is due to the pressure and control of society, I think, puts on us. But also, I just think from your own home, just growing up as a kid, I think from your parents, maybe for people that grew up in these environments where, and a lot of people too, they were tied to the churches, they were tied to the schools, they were tied to the communities. And so it was all about how you looked in front of everybody in the community. If your kid did something wrong or somebody did something bad, it was very hush-hush. The community can't know about it. We can't let anybody know because it's all about what? Showing a perfect image. But all you're doing is putting more pressure on you. And when something does happen, because you're going to make mistakes, it's part of life, it's part of learning. Sometimes God allows things to happen because maybe to get people's attention. But you just put more guilt on the child, more guilt on the kid. And this is kind of what I saw. And that's why I think too, it's a lot of, why people get older. A lot of people I know, man, that they got older and they got really upset with their life, and they just went down some wrong paths, some addictions, and just had a lot of anger in them. It was a lot of it stemmed from what they saw as a child, and just kind of the pressure put on them, just things that were done to them indirectly, or directly that wasn't their fault, and it just. Now again, does that mean you play a victimhood with it? No. Don't ever let things control you. Don't ever let things be your identity, who you are. It's up to you to get up your ass and do better for yourself. And I mean that not in a mean way, but just like hey man, come on, because you know why? I needed that. I need somebody to tell me that, just to get me going. And so, and a lot of times too, you start to, especially if you're a believer, I think you start to build compassion more towards people and understand why people are the way they are. It's not their fault either. It's just, I think there's just for so long we just were, It's just a lot of bad habits that were carried down for generations. You really think about it. And I just think now it's kind of up to us now here to how we change it. What do we do about it? Do we keep doing it different ways? Because it's really what we're still doing in a lot of ways. A lot of people are still doing the same thing subconsciously in different ways. They just don't really know it, but it's all they know. So subconsciously, it's how they act. Or are you really going to make a change in your life? You're going to try to make a change in the world and try to, be a light in the world. Let God use you. But again, that's up to you. And so, but yeah, I just think accomplishments and self-worth and all that, again, it goes back to perfection and just being overcritical on yourself. If things didn't go a certain way, like, I didn't get to really finish high school, go to school, because what happened to me? I didn't get to go to college. Am I less than anybody else? No. And in fact, I just went through some real life shit at an early age, probably maybe earlier than some people did. And so I had kind of learned some things sooner, maybe others. But does that mean I'm better and more? No, I'm not better than anybody. None of us are. I mean, if anything, you should be able to take what you've already gone through and try to help people that are going to be where you are, or are going to one day be where you were, or are where you were now. You know what I mean? You should always be trying to learn and engage. You should never think you're a finished product. You should never think you're a failure. You're neither. Nothing's ever done. Nothing's ever incomplete, or not at all. If that makes sense. Like, you're never like, it's like the all or nothing mentality we live by nowadays. I'm either this, I'm either that. Some people think they're either the greatest person in the world, or some people tell themselves I'm a piece of shit, which you should never tell yourself that. And so, or I'm not good enough, or I'm just not worthy enough, or I'm just not, or some people think they're just too good for everybody else and all that, bougie attitude. Both take you down the same wrong path. It's just in different directions. And so, again, it's all about, it's like if I had that mentality when I left high school, when I went through my college years, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I won't be able to do the things I've done in the last year. I won't be the person I know who I'm becoming now, who I have become. And I wouldn't be able to, I would never realized how people really thought about me. Like, man, I was talking to people, like, it's just in the last week I've talked to random people from my show the other day. They just say some awesome things to me. And this ain't about me, but just like, you start to realize God starts to speak to you through people oftentimes. And he helps you oftentimes through people to pick you up, to keep you going, to encourage you, to give you the advice you need. You know what I mean? You should always be seeking advice from people, especially your elders, people that are wiser than you. Oftentimes people that you just least expect too. I've learned that from so many people I least expected that gave me the best advice in life. And so, but I would never heard those things from people. I never have realized what God's doing with me, and I still haven't, which is fine, if I didn't allow myself to get out of that bad state of mind. You know what I mean? What I mean by all this is you start to realize that, no, you really are doing something. You know what I mean? You can do something. You can do something great and impactful. You can. I think as a Christian, especially as Christians, we should always be trying to leave a legacy that glorifies Christ and advances his kingdom. And especially with, like, for instance, like I said, I'm single, but one day I'm gonna get married and have kids. My marriage, me and my partner, our number one priority should be the Lord. That's most important. And how could we as a couple glorify God and advance his kingdom? And everything else that comes with marriage, all the other things that we all like to talk about, all those things God strengthens within the relationship, in the marriage. And so he'll take care of you. But again, it's all about the key, the first part, the foundation. A lot of times your mindset. So again, with all these things, if you're focusing on what TikTok or social media says, and all the other social media apps about how to achieve things, and I'm not saying there's people on there who don't say good things, but a lot of what you see on there, guys, is not 100% accurate or the truth. You can't take your situation and just apply it to everybody else's. Say, well, all these other people said they went through this, so it's saying, no, your path is your path. God might be calling you to do something differently. And this is what I had to learn. Because for a long time, I tried to help myself like how everybody else helps themselves initially. And I didn't get anywhere. It wasn't until I found something different. like this guy right here on the screen who was part of it, but also just I allowed myself to be different. I allowed myself to be who I wanted to be. And over time, the more I did that, I got back to my true self and I started to be more free. And I started to see that I can be creative. I can do things how I want to do them. And I don't have to wait to do certain things or feel like I have to be at a certain level to do things. No. If God gave me the ideas and the abilities and creativity to do it, I'm going to do it now. Because he was calling me to do it now. Like, for instance, with this podcast. And so, don't hold yourself back with certain things. And sometimes if you can start something, guys, or go for something, initiate something, and I've done this, especially in the past year, it may not go to fruition right away, but that's okay. It doesn't mean that this still won't. Just that again, that's where letting go comes into play. All of this, just letting go. That's really the biggest thing of today. Why we hold ourselves back is because we don't want to let go. It's like one of my favorite songs of all time is "Dogs" by Pink Floyd. And the best line, and my favorite line in that song, is he goes, "When you lose control, you reap the harvest that you've sown." And when you lose control, you will reap the harvest you have sown. Think of that. Write that down. Go listen to that song. Great song, by the way. Great album. But think of that. By the way, I got the Animals album sticker right there. That's Pink Floyd Animals album. But yeah, when you lose control, you'll reap the harvest you have sown. I'm gonna finish this up.
Okay. Now, let's understand, okay, that you cannot accommodate inner peace if you're not open to a new way of seeing things. Okay. This is so crucial. You have to look yourself in the mirror and remind yourself that you are open to new things. Okay? You cannot heal anxiety and be so closed off, right? You cannot live a rigid life and heal anxiety. You must allow the playfulness, the feeling of being carefree, the feeling of being able to speak up, the feeling of empowerment. You must allow these things to show up in your daily life if in fact anxiety is to be healed. Now let's get to know the higher self a little bit, okay? And you're probably going, man, I'm so caught up in the anxiety that it's difficult for me to connect with my higher self. I've been there. But just the simple introduction to a different you, right, will set you on a path of discovery and reflection and curiosity. So you don't have to do everything perfectly right now, right? You don't have to understand everything right now. Just be open to it, right? That's enough.
Yeah, and I love what he said at the end. You just got to be open to it, and you just got to be open to new things. Like you can't, you can. That's what holds yourself. It's what holds us back. Is like you said there, focusing on what could go wrong or trying to be perfect. And everything I said today, he just said there at the end to wrap it up. You just got to allow, and you just got to just go for things, man. You just got to just go for it. I've done so many new things in the last year in many different ways that there was times where maybe things weren't going how I thought they would go, and I would start to question myself, and I would start to kind of say, what did I do wrong? What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong. As long as you have a good intention about things and just, really you just had a good, or you just, how do I want to phrase this? As long as you're trying the best you can and you're going for things, like you said, there doesn't have to be perfect, but over time, the more as you go along, you can look back on things. And like you said, you start to reflect on things more. You start to be more open to things. You can start to okay, this is where I can improve. Maybe this is where I can do this differently next time. Maybe I can say this differently next time, or whatever it is. For many, it can be anything in life, and so, or it can be maybe tomorrow at work I'll do this differently than I did today in my whatever profession you're in, right? And that's kind of all it's about. It's like the mama mentality. It's a constant quest to be the best version of yourself each and every day. It's an everyday thing. And so, that takes pressure off of you, and just understanding that you're not alone, and that, um, yeah, just gotta allow, you just gotta let go. When you lose control, you reap the harvest you have sown. And so, yeah, that's my message for you guys today. And just like I said, you're never alone. And I was reminded of that again recently. I guess I'll share this real quick for you guys before I get out of here. Um, I'm a little tired, but not talking for a while. I get a little tired. But anyways, but one day, it was about, was it a week and a half ago, I was out on the bike, and I went to this one area where it was like a corner area by a bridge over the water by the Cuyahoga River, where it's like a little corner area where nobody could see you. It's like there's like a bridge, there's like a little corner area where you could sit on like this concrete slab. There's like trees in the woods and stuff. It's a walk only bridge. You can only walk over it. And so I go over this bridge every so often. And sometimes every now and then you see people that are struggling, like homeless, and that that's kind of where they go and hang out. Every now and then you see it. And so there's this gentleman who he doesn't know this guy. I've seen him over there a couple times in the last year. Every so often he'll stumble back over there. It's almost like he goes there for a period and then he leaves. Maybe when he goes back to wherever he lives, and then eventually something happens and he's like back there again, kind of thing. You just kind of get a feel for it. How do I know that? Because this guy actually used to be one of my a place I used to live when I was younger. He used to live in this house next door, so I actually know who this guy is. I recognize his face and I remember him, but he doesn't know who I am, and he doesn't remember who I am. And so but it's I remember back then. I think he was going through things, and it's kind of sad to see he still is now. And I'm not gonna say the person is obviously or anything, but um, I saw this person again like a week and a half ago out that corner, and you could tell he was struggling. And when I walked by this person, he was just sitting there, just and it's funny. It's sad. Because, well, not funny. I don't maybe say funny. It's sad because um, over in the corner by where they were sitting, it's just a mountain of beer cans. I mean, just a mountain of beer cans. It was him and some guy was with him. I never seen the other dude before, but I know he is. He don't know who I. He don't remember who I am though. So I walk by this guy. Long story short, and I see him. And I say hello, and he's kind of was like, "Hey, what kind of bike you got?" And, I'll sit talk to somebody. I didn't feel threatened or anything, and so I'm fine anyways. Just I'm good, but um, so I'm sitting there talking to him for a couple minutes, just trying to be friendly with him. How you doing? And you could just smell the alcohol coming off of him. You could just smell, just you could see the pain. It was really sad. Like he had like a real problem. And over in the corner, like I said, there was just a mountain of just like they've been sitting there all day, just constantly drinking and drinking. And I've known people like that in my own life who have turned their life around. And if you're somebody that's there right now, I'm not judging you. Hey, I pray for you. Hope you wish you well. I've had my moments too. And so, but the reason why I bring this up is because it was another reminder for me that, when I left that area, it kept going. You start to see other people who live maybe different lives, maybe different, maybe live better, maybe live in nice homes, and people that drive nice cars. I mean? And you just never know that this is like right by you, like literally around the corner. This person's sitting there going through this, and this is how they live. This is where they live outdoors. Now, could that be somebody else's fault? Why they live there? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. I'm not. That's. I don't know this person's backstory like that. I know who they are because, like I said, I remember the person's face. But that's not for me to. That's different for every case. Some people, there are some people out there that constantly put themselves in those situations by their own doing. But I also think too, it starts somewhere. It had to start somewhere. You don't just start doing bad shit for no reason. or having bad habits from the. It's like I talked about earlier with people. Like it's when I saw people that grew up in the nicest homes, nice families, nice maybe they're nice environments, but they had so much pressure put on them, so much expectations put on them, and then when they did get met or they let people down, they made their family or whatever look bad. Um, it's like they started to wear that false guilt put on them, and bear all that pain, and just that's kind of what oftentimes what turns a lot of people to go those directions. What kind of makes people go down those paths. And it starts somewhere. It doesn't all you don't always have to come from just what we deem as a lot of people think of traumatic backgrounds as only one way, being like poor and you know living in the growing up in the ghetto or something. Like grow up in bad environments and stuff like that. Or but a lot of times, a lot of what you see, man, it's people that grew up in actually nicer homes and nice environments, but it's just another way to look at it. It's pressure. A lot of times it was pressure. Their expectations weren't met. Or a lot of times there's homes where you aren't what you think they are. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes too. And so, in saying all this though, it was a good reminder for me because um, and I'm kind of got off track a little bit, but you're never alone, and you never know what's going on around you. Is kind of what closing out with here. You never know what's going on around you, and you should never hold yourself back because a lot of what we talk about today about what holds us back. You should start to just allow yourself to start slowly going forward because you never know. You could be the person that helps that person one day. You could have a podcast one day, and maybe somebody will see it. I've been very fortunate and very humble grateful in the last year to have some people say that I helped them with some things, just watching the show. And I'm just a small platform. I'm just a beginner, and so, but it's very humbling, very grateful. I'm very honored that God put me in a position to do that. And I give all the praise to Him because I don't view it as me because I wouldn't have made it this point if it wasn't for Him. If He didn't allow things to happen, I would have never thought of this 8 years ago. And so, but again, you just never know what's going on around you. You just never know. And that was a reminder for me. And you know what? And I prayed for the guy since because I really felt bad for him. And especially because I kind of knew who he was. Like I said, he used to live by me back in the day. I used to live on the other side of town. And so, yeah, man, you just never know. You never know what could actually what leads people to often what we don't think about oftentimes, which is a lot of times it's from other things, from pressure. It's from people bearing the guilt of their parents or people that were isolated. A lot of times people were left at home. A lot of times kids growing up were just raising themselves because the parents were out doing whatever they wanted to do, and nobody's at home raising the kids. And you can start to feel isolated as a kid. You don't really realize when you're young, you're not mature enough to. And I'm only 23. There's still things I'm still maturing, but I am now I'm a grown man. I'm a young adult. I don't but I could look back though when I was 15 years old, going through that experience, or when I was 11, even that time period, my early teenage years, there was a lot of things I just didn't really wasn't mature enough to comprehend, which is why when all those things happened to me back then, I was responding to them in that frantic stage. Where now, when I go into the same situations or same kind of fear or feelings, I respond to it in a more mature manner because I was able to figure out what it really was, rationalize it. But a lot of people don't, man. And so, but like again, you never know what's going on around you, and just you never know. And so that's why today's message is what holds us back, and don't be afraid to let go because you haven't talking to you could be the person that could save somebody or help somebody. God can use you for anything. And don't think you have to be a certain person, be a certain standard, be a certain way, or have X amount of money, or I gotta have this kind of career, or just to do something, or to please somebody, or to get somebody's acceptance. No, man, you don't gotta do any of that. Real recognize real. If somebody really likes you, really cares about you, really wants to genuinely see you grow, they don't care where you are. They want to help you for where you are. And I was very fortunate that God blessed me with people like that in the last 8 years. That I met new friends along the way, new people in my life. I was a lot of new people that were like, even people I already knew that I was afraid to tell what I was going through. I was trying to hide, I was trying to hide what I was going through. And even when I met new people, at first I was kind of struggling with it because I was trying to portray, like I was, you try to like portray this like I'm doing well image, even though I wasn't at certain times, and it wasn't until I started to be honest with people, and this is something I had to work to get really. And guys, this is something I really got better at and like really grown towards within the last year or two, and so it's been last year or two thing for me. So I'm speaking from experience here, but it wasn't until I started to let go of things and be open up to people, and I started to realize, hey, that person's actually going through something too. That person actually is that person. A lot of people I was talking to were actually going through the same thing I was going through, maybe different degrees or whatnot, but it was the same thing. And so, and a lot of people I've met too, we were like Mike Antonace and I. Mike's become one of my good friends. Mike and I needed each other, and that's not like when we met we were at like the best positions either, or at times in our friendship we both at times I've been in my low moments, he's been in his low moments, but we needed each other. It's like you might need somebody out there. Yeah, I might need somebody. I mean, you just never know. You just gotta allow yourself to be free, and just allow yourself to don't hold yourself back, and don't be afraid. You're never alone. Just let it go. And so that's the message for today. I know I rambled a lot there, but good stuff from Dennis like always. Leave a comment. Please like this video. When you guys like the video, it helps me. Helps me with the algorithms, fighting the algorithms, and put my video out more. So please like this video, share it if you like it, and yeah, that's all I got for you guys. I appreciate all you guys, love all you guys. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the support out there from all you guys, from everyone that's followed me last year. If you're new here, if you like this, hit the subscribe button. We do other content over here as well. We're doing sports content as well, live streams, and but this is obviously my main focus on this channel is what I've gone through and anxiety and spiritual growth and just kind of real life things. And so, yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here. Gone.